Hi, PG Holyfield here. I was going to do a bit of an introduction, but I just changed my mind. I'll explain myself at the end of this thing, what I call the Grump Speaks. Sort of a review, but more of a ramble from PG Holyfield. Damn, Ned. First you get your head chopped off. Then your oldest son, your wife, and most of the people you had sworn to protect are either dead or on the run. What more could Tywin fucking Lannister do to you now? Oh yeah, he could melt your Valyrian broadsword and forge 2 Lannister swords out of it. Even Jaime, trying to be a better man Lannister, had a chuckle when dear old dad gave him one and told him where he had gotten the steel. Speaking of Tywin Lannister, if Tyrion hadn't taken Ned's bones to Catelyn in Season 2, I could envision a scene where Tywin digs them up just to piss on them. Come to think of it, we didn't see what Tywin might have done to Ned's old wolf pelt scabbard before tossing it in the fire, did we? Speaking of 2 swords, like many of the episode titles of HBO's Game of Thrones, this one has multiple meanings. Where the 2 swords obviously can be seen to refer to the 2 swords being forged out of ice, it can also be seen to refer to the 2 Stark swords, Ice and Needle. But more on Needle in a bit. There was so much to like about this episode, so of course I'm going to start with what I didn't like. First off, why are Benioff and Weiss doing their best to make me want to strangle Shay every time she's on screen? That's a joke, by the way. A bad joke, but still a joke. Those that have read the books know that you have to walk a fine line with Shay. Let me take a moment here to talk about spoilers. While I'm coming at this as a book reader, I'm not going to spoil anything from the books that hasn't been shown or changed for the TV show, in this and future videos. I will, however, skirt the edge at times, saying things that readers will get, but should not spoil anything for the TV-only fan. That being said, you want to make sure I don't spoil anything at all, like the fact that Jon continues to be a pussy for... Just kidding. If you don't want any of my cryptic mumbo-jumbo to somehow come across as a spoiler, stop watching now. So back to Shay. Whether the show is going to completely mirror one particular Tyrion plotline or not, we need to feel. We need to at least understand why the hell Tyrion feels Shay is worth all the damn trouble. While I still love Shay's dichotomy, the woman that will do just about anything to protect Sansa, but hates that Tyrion feels the same responsibility for Sansa as both a teenager and a wife, there's been nothing in Shay's behavior toward Tyrion, pretty much since the beginning of Season 3, that would make one believe that Tyrion could or should still love her. Granted, maybe we just needed one more confrontation like the ones last season so Cersei's spy could do her work. But the scene was not a good one for either of the actors, and I don't believe for 1 second that Tyrion would just drop his line of questioning about the jewels and the attempt to send me away accusations Shay hurled his way like Oberyn Martell daggers. Another issue, more of a minor quibble, is how the show has forced itself to create this major previously on segment before the episode actually starts, because it's dropped the ball on characters and giving people any reason to remember who certain characters are. It makes sense to show how important ice is as a symbol of the Stark honor. But to be forced to show the shaming of Ser Dantos because you haven't shown him at all for over a season is ridiculous. For all the complaints from the "don't spoil me" crowd, HBO does the worst spoiling of all by having this 2-minute previously on segment. We could have mapped out most of the damned episode from it. Ooh, we're going to see ice this episode. Oh, we're going to see that drunk guy that Sansa saved from being drowned by wine. Oh, I bet Jaime gets to show off his stump some more. Woohoo! Yeah, let's just say I've decided to skip, mute any future previously on segments and get right to the opening Dreadfort-loving credits. And tied to this idea of dropping the ball on characters, is the fact that we're dealing with a new Daario Naharis. I understand the contracts can be broken, that Ed Skrein, who played Dario last season, left to go do a movie, but it is a trend that has seen The Mountain recast not once, but twice. Now, I think that Michael Huisman is a fine actor and will bring a lot to the role of Dario, but at least from our first look at him, it appears the showrunners have decided to make Dario even less grandiose and less larger than life than even his first incarnation, which may play well on TV but is a disappointment to me as a reader. But now that that's out of the way, we can concentrate on all the Westerosi goodness on display. One of the most compelling storylines for me is the Jaime-Cersei relationship. As a book reader, this is playing out completely differently for several reasons, but most importantly, it's because of when Jaime arrives at King's Landing in the books. Let's just say that Cersei is in a sufficiently different emotional place when Jaime and her reunite in the books. Having Jaime arrived when he has in the show has allowed this excellent duo to explore a different side of the relationship. I know a lot of people hate Cersei for good reason, and some have complained that Lena Headey's portrayal has been a bit one note over time. But I, for one, can't wait to see what happens this season with Cersei. I mean, just think about what has happened to her since the beginning of the show. When season 1 began, she was the most powerful woman in the Western world. But whether or not it was her hand that brought about the death of her husband Robert, she certainly felt as Queen Regent she would wield even more power than as Robert's queen. But as we saw, that was far from the long term or even the immediate result of Robert's death. Ned Stark was a better adversary than Cersei had anticipated, even though his honor was his eventual downfall. But Ned's death and his final message to Stannis led to war, and this took Jaime away from her. And the war brought Tywin out of Casterly Rock, and Joffrey's growing sadistic tendencies brought Tyrion back to King's Landing to shake things up as the Hand. And as the Hand, he did his best to control things, and in so doing, ended up sending Cersei's only daughter away to Dorne. Now that Joffrey is really coming into his own, dickish own, and Tywin is never leaving King's Landing, Cersei has fallen even more into her cups, so to speak. So when she yells, "You're too late," at Jaime, even though some viewers were saying, "No, he's too early," what she's saying is very true. She's barely better off than she was when she was about to kill herself and Tommen during the battle at Blackwater, because she is living her nightmare of a woman trapped in a man's world with little power being pushed into a marriage with, as she called Loras, a pillow biter. Another plot thread I'm going to enjoy watching this season, based on the first episode, is, wait for it, Jon Snow and the Wall. I know, right? Those that know me or have heard me on Beyond the Wall know that Jon's story over the last 2 seasons has made me wince at times, not counting the relationship between Jon and Ygritte, even though I give most of the credit of that to Rose Leslie. However, a change for the show revealed in Sunday's episode, bringing both Alistair Thorne and Janos Slynt into play this early, will permit story changes that should work well for the show. The idea that the Wall might be defended by more than simply old men, cripples, and recruits should play well, along with the knowledge that Jon is going to be hounded and mistrusted throughout by most around him. Plus, with everything that has happened to both Jon and Sam since they parted, their bromance should be an interesting watch. Okay, let's get back to King's Landing. Specifically to our man from Dorne, Oberyn Martell. Oh, I like this guy. Pansexual, and at first glance he treats his paramour Ellaria Sand as an equal, in the bedroom at least. Who wants to see the argument between Tyrion and Shae once Shae gets a load of the relationship between these two? Anyone that has a gripe with the Lannisters is okay by me. And something we haven't been reminded of yet is that old Oberyn has an ace in the hole. See, the Lannisters can't exactly shut Oberyn up unless he does something completely heinous, because as I've already mentioned, the last time we saw Cersei's lovely daughter, Myrcella Baratheon, she was sailing off to live with Oberyn's brother in Dorne. Speaking of things I'd like to see, who else wants to see a bromance grow between Bronn and Oberyn? The conversations and nighttime fun with these two, now that Tyrion has been somewhat tamed by marriage, could be epic. This is already going on longer than expected, so I'll save the rest of my talk for Beyond the Wall, which we'll be recording Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. But I can't leave without talking about the second Stark sword, Needle. I doubt that there's been many times in entertainment history where watching what is supposed to be an 11-year-old brutally murder someone has elicited spontaneous cheering around the world. Now, there are several themes that are going to be explored this season. You've got the idea of ruling and how it's very different than just winning a war. Along with that is the idea of control. Tywin is great at moving his chess pieces around his map, but like you found with Jaime in this episode, making them do what he wants might not be as easy as he would hope. Daenerys is going to have to rule as well, and she's learning she can't even control her dragons as she might expect. But back to Arya. Another theme for this season will certainly be, as like in earlier seasons, the idea of oaths. Jaime has his oaths made to Brienne and his oaths as one of the King's Guard. The Hound has his code, which is his own version of an oath. Jon has to deal with the repercussions of breaking his vows. But Arya, as we found in Sunday's episode, is becoming very good at keeping her oaths. The question is, will her apparent aptitude at keeping her oath, her promise of revenge, become her undoing? This is a great start to Season 4, and I will be here to give you my personal views on each and every episode. And more than likely, future episodes I'll be a lot more grumpy than I am tonight. My name is PG Holyfield, and if you want to hear more of my ramblings, I'm the host of the 3-time Parsec-nominated podcast, Beyond the Wall. We record live on Google Hangout on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can stop by the Specfic Media YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch live. You'll be able to watch episodes from Beyond the Wall for Season 3. Seasons 1 and 2 are in audio form, plus Season 3 in audio form can be found at specficmedia.com. And you can subscribe to our podcast, our audio podcast, on iTunes and different places there. And that's it. Thanks, and come back next week for another installment of The Grump Speaks. Bye, everybody.